We've got a story from NBC News, and people who watch Brass Check carefully can probably see right through it. It's called California Farm Workers are being hit hard by something called valley fever. And it is a real disease, and it is deadly, but there's quite a bit of misdirection going on. They are attributing it to global warming. Isn't that convenient? And now, first of all, three things. If NBC News is involved, we know it's bullshit. Somebody has paid for that story. That's number one. Number two, if global warming is the cause, it's probably something else. And if we're talking about agriculture, we know damn well what that something else is. It's glyphosate. And they do not report anywhere in this article, which is about farm workers in the Central Valley of California working in orchards, fruit and nut orchards. Nowhere do they report the basic fact that glyphosate, Roundup, made by Monsanto, now owned by Bayer, is the weed suppression chemical of choice for orchard growers. So this stuff is sprayed everywhere. And for people that watched the lecture by a farmer that we put up, you know that one of the things, in addition to poisoning you, the other things that glyphosate does is poison the soil. And the soil is a biome, and it's supposed to have a balance, give or take, just like your gut is supposed to have a balance. You're supposed to have a preponderance of healthy bacteria to keep the bad bacteria in check. And one of the quickest ways to get sick, seriously sick, is to have a long-term chronic imbalance of your gut biome. And the bad bugs grow wild. And that's what happens. Same thing happens in the soil. So they spray glyphosate with the encouragement of the guys who sell this stuff to suppress the weeds in the orchards. The farm workers get it in their lungs, on their skin, in their eyes. I mean, they're saturated in it. If the average American has 6 times the amount of glyphosate as the average European, the average American farm worker probably has, 100 times. Who knows how high it is. But that's not the only problem. The other problem is the chemical is designed to kill, and it does kill, and it kills the healthy bacteria and the healthy funguses that are in the soil. And we need those things for the soil to break down and be fertile. And when you undermine that with a toxic chemical, it's the same thing that happens in your gut. The bad bacteria and the bad funguses run wild. So yes, it is dry in the Central Desert, in the Central Valley. It is hot in the Central Valley. It's been dry and hot in the Central Valley for the last 2,000 freaking years, okay? But no one's ever seen this level of people getting sick with something called valley fever. And they do acknowledge that it is some kind of a fungus and that it's carried in the soil. But what they don't tell you in this NBC article, so well produced, is that, in fact, the soil has been made toxic, and the soil-borne fungus that is making all these farm workers sick is the result of that toxicity. So this is a kind of a sad story, because this was produced by a pretty good group called Civil Eats, and they're trying to report on the American food system. And I'm sure the way this happened is some scumbag at some PR firm who works for Monsanto went to their scumbag friends at NBC, and NBC went to this pretty good group and said, hey, we're going to work with you. We're going to work with you on this because we're such good guys. And we want to help the farm workers. I mean, it's so ludicrous. The notion that anybody at NBC gives a flying fuck about any farm worker in California is so preposterous as to defy belief. But you know what? I understand people have hope. But my advice is when it comes to mainstream news media, especially NBC, especially an article about agriculture, especially an article about an epidemic of a fungus-based disease that's laying these poor workers out, killing them, making them very ill, crippling them, disabling them, that it is not global warming that did it. Okay? This disease did not exist at these levels 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and it probably didn't exist at any level before glyphosate was invented and started to be sprayed everywhere. So this is an interesting example of how it works. And again, if you're a Brass Check viewer, you would have known the second you saw that NBC was involved, that doing a good deed, that something was very wrong. And then the next thing is, gee, this is NBC caring about farm workers? Highly implausible. And the next thing is agriculture in America, which has been completely colonized by Monsanto. And of course, Monsanto and NBC, I mean, they couldn't be chummier or more friendly. And the fact that they could put out this article, and so why did they put this article out? Because somebody has to address the fact that all these farm workers are becoming severely disabled and dropping dead. So what do? You do a little misdirection. You talk about the dust and the dry conditions, and you talk about global warming, and you don't look at the obvious real cause, which is the derangement of the biome of the soil of these orchards caused by the reckless use of glyphosate, a known carcinogen that has been sprayed by the container shipload on all these orchards for years and years, completely unbalancing the microorganisms in the soil and letting the pathogenic organisms, in this case a fungus, run wild. Yeah, and then it gets dry and the wind blows. That's not new. Dust is not new. But dust with this level of pathogenic fungus in it is new. And I would bet a large sum of money that this is the result of glyphosate poisoning of the soil and has nothing to do with global warming. So anyway, that's looking behind the news, and that's the story.
And so let's just talk about some characteristics of this stuff, because I think it'll help us kind of understand how it affects the plant and how it affects microbes. Okay? Glyphosate has 2 patents. Okay? The first one is it is a chelator, which means because glyphosate is phosphate based and there are 3 negative valences to it, it likes to grab onto positive things. That's just its chemical reaction. Okay? What it likes to grab onto is positive compounds. Well, positive compounds happen to play an important role in the plant. The other thing that it's patented as is a very potent antibiotic. There we go. I got too many letters in the wrong place. Okay? Which means that it kills microorganisms. Okay? So, what they initially used glyphosate for was to demineralize pipes that got filled up with hard water. Okay, because your calcium, magnesium salts tend to fill in your pipes in time and close off the water flow. And they used glyphosate as a method of pulling those minerals away from the pipe and opening up the pipes again. It's very effective at doing this. Okay? So how it works in a plant. Okay? I have a plant sitting in here. Let's draw this wonderful plant sitting out here. Okay? And glyphosate works on the plant's secondary metabolism systems, metabolic systems. What it means is the first thing it does, it goes into the plant and it starts pulling minerals away from the plant's enzymes so that it shuts down functions. Okay, that's what it's doing. No different in a pipe than in a plant. It's going to grab magnesium, manganese, copper, zinc. Glyphosate has a tremendous attraction for manganese. Okay, now manganese is important for a lot of things. So as it pulls these minerals away from the enzymes, the plant begins to shut down. And so it begins to destruct the plant's operating and immune systems. Now, glyphosate by itself cannot kill a plant. You put a plant in sterile soil, glyphosate can stunt it, but it can't kill it. There are two actions required when you use glyphosate to kill a plant. The first one is if you have to shut down its defense systems. The second thing is glyphosate is systemic. We talked about this at lunch, which means that it goes throughout the plant and then part of it is pushed out the root systems. Plants put out between 25 to 45% of the sugars they make out the root systems to feed biology. Okay? When the glyphosate goes out the root system, it begins to kill beneficial microbes. It requires the assistance of a soil pathogen to kill the plant with glyphosate. Particularly Fusarium, Pythium, Rhizoc. Okay, those fungal type pathogens are the secondary mechanism that assists glyphosate in killing a plant. That's why you don't see it instantly die. That's why it takes time to get the pathogen assistance to do this. The pathogen, if the plant is healthy, the pathogen doesn't have a mechanism to come in and take the plant out. It has some defenses. And so how glyphosate works is it shuts down the defenses, the pathogen can come in, attack the root system, and we can kill a plant this way. It's very effective. Works very well. Here's the problem. In the soil, I have two groups of bacteria. I have good guys and I have bad guys. Okay? We come back to this. It only takes 1/10 of 1 part per million to start taking out my beneficial microbes. It's not very much. This is way less than the label rate. Okay? It takes 4,000 times that to start killing your pathogens. So it's a very selective antibiotic. It is actually a pathogen promoter because it doesn't kill pathogens at your label rate. It stimulates them. That's why it works. This research was done by Dr. Don Huber. It's happened over and over and over again. They've repeated this thing dozens and dozens of times. Purdue University, an amazing, amazing plant pathologist. They did this research where you could take a plant, put it in sterile soil, and squirt it with glyphosate. And yes, it stunted the plant, but they wouldn't die. When you put them in soil with regular microorganisms and you sprayed it with glyphosate, then in time the plant would die. But if you took a fungicide after you sprayed the plant with glyphosate and put a fungicide in there, the plant stopped dying. Because then it killed the second mechanism that took the plant out. Now, glyphosate doesn't go away. The industry will want to tell you that it's harmless, you can drink it, it goes away in your soil like magic, and it doesn't. You know, we talked about earlier, we have higher and higher levels of glyphosate residue in our plants because it stays in our soil. Now, we use it, and it's been very effective against taking out weeds. But the problem is we're actually stimulating these bad groups in our soils. You'll have within days of applying glyphosate, you can have a 500% increase in fusarium in your soil. Now, what kind of problems does fusarium cause? All kinds of vomitoxin in your grain. Okay? And when you get vomitoxins too high, you can't sell your grain. Those are two species of fusarium. Maybe I don't want to stimulate these guys. Okay? You have all of these fungal pathogens that stimulate off of this compound. Because what we did is we removed the good guys that kept them in check. That's the whole problem here, is nature has no voids. Okay? There's always something in space. So if this is my environment. Let's just say this is my soil, my gut. They're all the same. I want to maintain a huge population of good guys and a very, very, very small population of bad guys. Okay? And this is the way nature does it. Okay? Now, bad guys actually have a role in nature. They take out sick plants. That's how nature does this. That's their role, is to remove sick plants, because one, sick plants will never provide the basis of nutrition for higher life forms. So what do we grow plants for? Something's usually going to eat them. If the plant is deficient, the higher life forms don't have the nutrition. They're not going to survive. Okay, they're not going to maintain health. The next one is it refines the gene pool. Okay? And so nature doesn't tolerate subnormal stuff in the gene pool. It weeds it out. We think that's very harsh because we have to save everything. But that is not nature's way. And so what happens here is when we manage these balance of microbes, whether it's in us or in our soils, everything that goes into us or into our soil has a microbial effect. Everything. You guys have to look at us like we are nothing more than biological generators, chemical generators. That's all. We are run by all of this chemistry and all of this microbiology. And everything that goes in, from water to cider to nuts to cinnamon rolls to statin drugs, everything alters biology. Sugar will push certain microbes. Proteins push certain microbes. Oils push certain microbe growth. And so if we have French fry and pot pie or Hostess Twinkie diets and all that kind of stuff, we're going to push a group of microbes in our system that then produce our nutrient compounds or our toxic compounds. Glyphosate is one of these compounds that's notorious for quickly rebalancing biology populations because it takes out the good guys without taking out the bad guys. And so when we feed plants that have glyphosate in them, they're restructuring the gut microflora balances. When we spray glyphosate on our soil, we're rebalancing our soil microorganism populations. We're down in the good guys, up in the bad guys. We're going to have more disease issues. Okay? And then as we alter the biology populations, we intensify weed pressure. Now what nature has done is says, oh, guess what? We do not have, now we have weed that are completely resistant to glyphosate. Okay? Can't kill them now with glyphosate. And so the mechanism is the glyphosate still stunts the plant, but the plant has figured out different chemistry so the pathogens can't get to it anymore. Okay? Plants sometimes have 300 or 400 ways of making compounds to do certain things. It's like, well, I'm plugged this hallway, I'll go around it. They'll figure it out in time because weeds are there to fix the mineral and the biological balances in soils. They're not there to torment you. They do, but when our soils get out of balance, weeds come to readjust it. Now think about this. Some weeds will put down very shallow roots, and what they're doing is they're picking up phosphate. Because phosphate does not go deep into your soil. It's very reactive, right, Abe? Won't go down deep. It immobilizes, stays on top. And so you have all of your broad-based weeds are picking up those minerals near the top. They'll bring them in, resolubilize them, and put them in a plant-available form. Your deep taproots are picking up your heavier minerals. So you got your trace minerals and your calcium. Minerals are like BBs and feathers. The light ones float and the heavy ones go down. So you have all these minerals that stratify into different zones in your soils. How weeds do this is they send a gigantic root down there, tap into those heavier ones, they pull them up in their bodies, put them in the plant. When they die, they redistribute minerals from way down here to way up here. Now, this is a perfect system if you have a couple 100 million years to wait out the process. Nature will fix that soil. We're a little bit impatient because we're going farming next week, so we're going to go nuke everything. So what we do is we go force the readjustment of the biology, we don't care about the minerals, and we just go nuke the weed and then we go in and plant behind it. Okay? That's one way of doing it. But what it does is it causes these imbalances that they just get worse. It's like pushing a snowball uphill. Eventually, you can't push it any farther. Nature's going to let it roll back over top of you. Okay? So we can go about things the wrong way just so long. Because nature is always going to win. We will never outsmart nature with a synthetic product trying to fix a biological problem. We are not smart enough to do this.